fellow tamers and Digidestined, it's Mike, aka Sanaku from Overground, and welcome back to the channel. So, we're on the next episode of our Rainbow series, and today we're going to be covering the color blue. Now, before you say anything, no, it is not Blue Hybrid. That is super boring, and we're not going to take that route. We decided to go a little bit spicier, but it's still going to be a heavy Blue Hybrid engine, and for that I apologize, but I don't think you're going to get away with any blue deck in this format that doesn't have that engine inside. So, let's go ahead and talk about it. The deck we are playing today for blue is Hex-Brid, and that's not really a huge shock. I don't know why I built it up, but with all of the Tommy support coming out and the ability to freeze opponent's cards, Hex-Brid has a natural fit in this format. So let's talk about the deck that we built today. It's a blue hybrid Hex-Brid list. So starting with our eggs, we're playing 4 copies of Kiaramon and then 1 copy of Mukimon. Kiaramon, again, it's just your main consistency starter. Every time you take a source away, you're going to draw an additional card. And Ukimon, if you swing with a Digimon, well, you have your opponent has something without a source, you get to draw an additional card as well. So each one of these eggs just satisfies the condition of helping us dig a little bit deeper into a deck to getting all of our combo pieces as consistently and as quickly as possible. Now, moving on to our rookies. We're playing 4 copies of Strabimon. Blast for the Past. There's not a single BT7 card you've seen yet so far, right? And Strabimon, really important. On play, we get to look at the top 3 cards of our deck. We get to add a hybrid as well as a blue tamer, which we're playing a significant portion of in this deck, which is very, very cool. Our rookie lineup is kind of weird because, again, similar to the yellow deck that we just saw in the last video, and the green deck one as well, your tamers are mostly your play starters now. So opening with a tamer is basically the equivalent of opening a rookie. And most of the rookies you play in this deck, you generally don't want to evolve over your eggs. You just do so to get the extra draw power. But for the most part, they exist primarily to just kind of sit on the board and be floodgates to your opponent. And any additional card outside of a floodgate, you're playing to kind of increase your consistency even further. And what I mean when I'm talking about that is that we're playing 2 copies of Madoki Betamon. So again, our opponent can't gain memory, very important. And then 2 copies of Syakomon. And this is really important in context, something like the green deck as well, and even the yellow deck, where it stops that reduction of evolution costs, where, something like Jet Selfimon and Rhino Kabuterimon, if you evolve over a tamer, they've reduced their evolution cost by 2, which means they're only 1 cost evolutions. Syakomon means that they are going to be a hard 3, full stop, every single time. And then finally, we're playing 2 copies of Strabimon. This is additional search power. On play, we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck versus the 3 of the original Strabimon. We have 1 card of Hybrid Illustrates, or Susanoo-mon, or 1 Koji. And it has the inheritable of, on deletion, we can play 1 Koji from our hand. And you're going to notice a trend. We're playing a small Koji engine, I'm going to say, and it's going to be a 2-2 split. And you're going to see all the 2 we'll just get through the deck and you'll kind of see how everything matches together. But ideally, you want to evolve into your Madoki Betamon or your Syakomon in your raising. You want to always hard play your Strabies to get you additional value. And then when you move these up, your egg is always going to be online for additional value down the road. And then you can kind of lock your opponent out with these guys as well. But now let's go on to our level 4s, which again are going to be the bread and butter of this deck because your tamers are basically going to be your new age rookies. So we're playing 4 copies of Kumamon. Kumamon, when Digivolving, you can trash 1 Digivolution card from the bottom of our opponent's Digimon. This will trigger all of our Kiaramons and everything like that as well, while also getting us 1 step closer to potentially freezing our opponent's Digimon and keeping them locked in place. And Kumamon can evolve for 2 on top of a tamer, which is really cool, really important. But it combos really well with our 4 copies of Korikakumon. Korikakumon, again, like every other of the beast spirits that you're going to see in this format, evolves for a level 3 for 3, level 4 for 1, or if we evolve over a tamer, it's going to cost 2 instead. And when Digivolving, if we have a card with Hybrid Illustrates, or Tommy specifically, we can target one of our opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards. They can't attack or block until the end of the next turn. So it's essentially a Howling Memory boost on legs. And then to round out our champions, we're playing 2 copies of Lobomon. Again, just a hybrid. You'll notice a trend with a lot of these hybrid decks that we're building through the course of the format. A lot of your heavy Haymaker hitters are all, if this card has a hybrid or blank and their traits do X, and because our medium lineup, or level 4 lineup, will always have hybrids, that means that the top end is always going to be online no matter what. And speaking to that, we're playing 4 copies of Beowulfmon. This is another hybrid we can search through our Strabimons respectively. And Beowulfmon reads that this is our blue equivalent of the evolution reducer, where if we have a hybrid, if we evolve into something with a tamer and its traits, we're going to evolve for 1 instead of 3. And when attacking, you can return a card with hybrid and its traits from this evolution cards to our hand to return one of our opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to their own hands as well. And the reason why Beowulf is really important and why we're playing 4 copies of it is because when we evolve over a level 4, it essentially allows us to recycle that level 4 to use it over again. So we almost have an infinite supply of champions at the end of the day, which means that we can have an infinite supply of ways to keep evolving over our tamers to keep our opponent on their guard if we ever need to stun them, but it also gives us more potential to always threaten lethal because we'll always have a hybrid in our hand to evolve over a tamer to just swing for game if that ever comes up. And to complement that, since we're playing 4 copies of Hex-Brid, we're also playing 4 copies of Crisp Paildramon. And Crisp Paildramon, again, on Evo, we could trash the bottom card of one of our opponent's Digivolution sources, and if we have opponent's If an opponent has a Digimon in play that has no evolution sources, the Digimon that this is going to be evolved over top of will have security attack +1. This is kind of a staple in Hexeblaumon lists of old, and this will lead us into playing the 4 copies of Hexeblaumon himself. And if you're unfamiliar, Hexeblaumon reads that if our opponent has a Digimon in play with no sources, it cannot attack or block. And we're all about stripping sources and kind of keeping our opponent off of their ability to play the game, respectively. Blue has kind of been affectionately titled the No Fun Zone deck this format, and I believe this is kind of takes that theory to the next level. Blue Hybrid in general is very powerful, but I do like the idea of the added aggression we get with Hexeblaumon and the extra stun power we get as well. When we attack, we get to strip 2 sources away as well, and then if our opponent has something without a source in play, we also have jamming. So this combined with Crystalgramon User, we're going to have a jamming +1 sec attacker, while also keeping our opponent at bay, because if they don't have any additional sources in play, they cannot declare an attack. Now, in hybrid meta, again, there's kind of a contradiction here, because having something without sources is irrelevant when your opponent can just evolve up into a tamer and then they're off to the races one more time. However, we do have cards that allow us to interact on our opponent's turn. This is something like Tommy if he gets hit in security, for example. So there's still ways to kind of keep stripping our opponent's sources even if they try to come back into the game. And similar to the Doremon deck where we talked about the reboot strategy and how we wanted to unsuspend our Digimon to make sure that our opponent couldn't run them over because they're the most valuable resources that we have and we can build up to a level 6. Enter Magna Garurumon, and this is going to go hand in hand with our small Koji engine as we talk about it as well. So Magna Garurumon is going to be our complement level 6, and it serves 2 main purposes. The first purpose is that it's a very good source of tempo, and it keeps our opponent kind of at bay because we can return on Digivolution or when attacking. We may, which is very important because the timing of this is going to be really important, we can return any card with hybrid and it straightens back to our hand to return the same level that our opponent controls back to their hand as well. And once returned, if a card effect adds a card to our hand, we can unsuspend one of our Digimon. So let's talk about Koji really quick because he's going to be coming up. So, the Stravumon Inheritable that lets us play a Koji from our hand. This essentially allows us to get this in play to set up our Magna Garurumon play down the road. Now, your priority from that point forward is going to be establishing any stack that has Hexeblaumon while also having a Koji in play, and you ideally want to make sure that you can have those 5 hybrids in trash, either check through security or check through pot shots with your opponent, and you'll go swing with Hexeblaumon, with jamming, trash the extra 2 sources, get your extra check if you have Crystalgramon, and then you're going to go use Koji's effect to warp into Magna. Then you're going to use Magna's effect to use one of the sources that you put under the Koji to return a card to your opponent's board, to their hand, or you can just add a card to your hand just to do it for the sake of doing it. And because you've added a card to your hand, you now have the opportunity to unsuspend one of your Digimon. It doesn't have to be Magna specifically, which means that if you've swung with Hex and you've gone into the Magna, you can unsuspend your Hex immediately, and now your opponent can't run it over. Again, they'd have to burn a source of removal, but now you actually have 2 level 6s on the next turn as well. So they need to make sure that they have enough removal to deal with 2 level 6s or else they're in for a world of hurt. Now, you go into your next turn, you swing with Hexeblau again, and now you're going to swing with Magna, and then Magna's effect is on when attacking as well, so you can return another source to your hand and then unsuspend your Hexeblaumon again. This is really important because if you have Crystalgramon with that extra security attack +1, that gives you 2 checks, 2 swings at 2 checks, or it just lets you play defensively while making sure that your Hexeblaumon stays untapped. And this kind of plays into the whole old protect the castle strategy that Hexeblaumon had, but I feel that this kind of cool tempo strategy and making sure that your Hex always kind of stays untapped and making sure that your opponent can't go after it while also keeping the additional threat of Magna specifically is very, very, very strong. Now, we've talked about Koji, let's talk about the rest of the Tamers. So we're playing 3 copies of Sora Joe as well. This just helps us keep our opponent off of their sources, while also giving us an additional way to gain more memory. And this is going to be very important when it comes to this Magna Garurumon play, because we can evolve without passing our turn, while also building potentially up into an entire Hexeblaumon line. If we have multiple copies of Sora Joe in play, we're starting our turn with potentially, 4, 5, 6, 7 memory. We're not playing Davis in this deck, which seems very strange on paper, but the idea is that the Sora Joes will essentially carry us to great heights when it comes to our memory. We don't necessarily need the additional search power with Davis because we have so much consistency already in the form of all of our hybrid searchers. And finally, we're playing 4 copies of Tommy. And what Tommy does is that on play, we can trash 3 Digivolution cards from the bottom of our opponent's Digimon, and when he becomes a Digimon, his inheritable is that when attacking until the end of your opponent's next turn, one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can't attack or block. So between this Korikakumon and Hexeblaumon, we're essentially creating a bubble around our opponent's stuff, which means that they can never actually use their Digimon for anything. And then when you combo that with something like Magna Garurumon, you're putting your opponent in a situation where they're actually under a tremendous amount of pressure because they just can't play the game, and the only out they have is to dig through their deck with hybrid evolutions and hope that they have enough memory to kind of carry them. Otherwise, everything that they would currently have in play is completely, void and irrelevant to your board state. So you're kind of playing very ignorant to what your opponent potentially has, but I think that's one of the strengths of this deck as well, versus your traditional blue hybrid. It's less moving pieces and it has a more kind of straightforward win condition. And finally, we're going to move on to your options. You're playing 4 copies of Hammerspark, just because this is a blue deck, and because Ice Wall got limited, which we're playing the 1 copy of as well. You want to have more bombs in your security that helps you kind of pass the turn a little bit faster, because the faster that you can end your opponent's turn, the quicker you can go back into your turn and start setting up your locks again. And we're just playing 2 more copies of Howling Memory Boost. This just, again, ties everything together. It's more opportunities for us to get rid of our opponent's sources, more opportunities for us to stun our opponent, while also giving us more opportunities to gain more memory to start setting up big tempo swings on our turn. So, this is my take on a Blue Hexeblau hybrid list going into the BT7 meta. If you guys had any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I have been Mike, aka Sanaku, once again. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like what we do at the Overground, please consider giving us a subscribe. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.